Rolling here, take 3, Dominic.
Yeah, well, I think we were talking about Karura Forest back in 1983, the visit of the witch doctor. Anyway, the first thing he did was to light a small fire on the concrete floor of the sitting room in Harris's house. And I suppose there were about 6 of us, together with the witch doctor, around the little fire. And then he held above it, on a thin thread, a little sort of witchcraft box, I suppose you might call it. A little packet of possibly human bones. Anyway, when it was held above the fire, his hand was absolutely steady, it wasn't moving around at all. This thing sort of started accelerating until it was flying around, like that. Anyway, he explained that by saying that was to test the veracity of the original claim, the fact that Michael had stolen the money. And this was saying yes. Anyway, he then, the others didn't know about the curse on Michael, whereby he'd get broken bones. Other people around there witnessed all this and it was astonishing, really. Anyway, Witchcraft then, having done that, he went outside and he walked round the jamba, round the garden, and threw the eggs, beautifully inscribed eggs, around. Then he took the cock and cut its throat and went around sprinkling the blood all around. He then said to me, right, it's finished. Either Michael will return the money, which he's got left, or he won't return it and he'll suffer these broken bones. So anyway, I did nothing for a week. I heard nothing from Michael, he hadn't come back. And so I then decided to go up to the village where he lived, Kiamba, and see him. So I went up there. Those days I had an old Peugeot 203 from the mid-50s. And I parked outside his garden path and walked up, and he came out of his house, and in fact it was a new built house. He already built this house, spent the money which he had found under the tree to buy the building materials. And he came out, and to my astonishment I saw that he had a plaster cast on his entire leg. So, actually I didn't think I even spoke to him. I was so surprised by this. I just went back to my car and drove off. Anyway, another week or so went by. He didn't come back, and I went there again. And this time he came out of the door, and his arm had been broken and was in a cast. So he had both a cast on his leg and on his arm. So at this stage I thought, well, this witch doctor's stuff is really working. It's not nonsense, it does work. Anyway, I didn't see Michael, he never came back. I went once to the chief of the village and tried to see whether anything could come back. And he said no. Of course, I didn't mention about the witch doctor. And then about 3 or 4 years later, I was staying with my sister, Nicholas Stockdale. And they lived down there in the middle of a coffee plantation on Njenga Karume's estate. And Njenga Karume was a very rich Kikuyu politician who had huge coffee plantations up in beyond Kiamba. Anyway, I was going for a walk through the coffee one evening, this was about 4 years later, and to my astonishment I saw Michael coming down the path towards me, and his arm was in a plaster and a sling. And he saw me looking at it, and he said, "Oh, well, Dominic, I keep breaking my bones. Whenever I go out, something happens and I have another accident and break my arm or my leg." So of course I didn't admit to him that it was I who originally put the witch doctor onto him. But I went and tried to discover the witch doctor so as to get him to take the curse off. And I went down to where he lived in Kawangware, which used to just be a few fields, and he had a hut in the corner of one field. And I found the whole place was built up. It had all become houses. And it was quite impossible to find him or where he was. So that was the sad case of my first trip to a witch doctor and the results.